Rule 17, round robins. Um, Now the entire round robin rule text is with this rule. So let's get started on round robins. Round robins. I'm going to tell you about round robins, and then I'm going to give you a great idea that is associated with round robins, but is actually not a round robin. But it didn't come from me, but I'm going to pass it along to you. So let's get started. Is that it's not a desirable format to use for a tournament. And the reason they say that is because if you're going to do a tournament and the whole tournament is around robin, the whole tournament's just one game basically for the three teams that are involved. But but it is an acceptable form if you have some kind of constraint, whether it's rain or soggy fields or something, or you just have three teams, or you only have one day to play, or whatever it is. You can use a round robin. The USPA would rather you didn't if you didn't have to, and the reason for that I think is people want to play more games than just one. And after we discuss round robins, I'm going to give you a little tip on a way to do that, and have maximum amount of games over 2 days with three teams. So the round robin is a format used with three teams, and you're going to play three mini games. So if your tournament if a straight game would have been 6 chukkers, then each mini game in the round robin will be 3 chukkers. And each team is going to play the other 2 teams. Okay? So everybody gets to play 6 chukkers, but you only play 3 chukkers against every other team. If your regular game in the tournament would have been 4 chukkers, then you'll do exactly the same thing, except each mini game will be just 2 chukkers. So you'll play 2 chukkers against every other team. Make sense? So to get started, you usually just decide, flip of a coin or some other way, decide by lot who's going to play first. And now you have your first 2 teams playing, and there's one team sitting out watching or umpiring or whatever the requirements are of your particular tournament. Okay, so the 2 teams play their first mini game. Let's just say it's 3 chukkers. Okay, remember that the third chukker is the last chukker of that mini game, and that is the last chukker. So it's going to be timed like a last chukker, like a final chukker. So the last 30 seconds will be played out. So just remember that, and unless a goal is scored or the time runs out. Okay, so just go to duration of periods for that information. But so that's an easy thing to forget as an umpire. Okay, so with that being said, the team that loses the first 3 chukkers, that loses the first mini game, that team stays up to play the second mini game, and the team that won will sit down. And the reason for that is if the team that won stayed up and then they win the next game, there's no reason to play the third mini game. Okay, so that's no fun. No fun. So you leave the losers stays up. Now, I have seen, because of some particular time constraints or something like that, where they'll pre-agree on who's going to play when, and then they play out the last 2 chukkers no matter what. That's something the host tournament committee can deal with, and we don't need to talk about that in the rules. You can no longer have a tie at the end of any of the mini games in the round robin. Okay, historically you could, and it would count as a win for both teams. Now you cannot do that anymore. So I'm almost sorry that I told you what happened historically, but most of you know anyway. So if you have a tie at the end of the mini game, what you're going to do is you're going to do a mini shootout procedure. It would be the same shootout procedure you would do for the end of the game. For the end of a game, not a tournament shootout procedure. The end of a game shootout procedure. It's different. Rule 14D. Okay. So what you're going to do, instead of following the entire procedure and having every single player on the team hit from the 40-yard mark, what you're going to do is a mini one. So you're just going to pick one player from each team and have them shoot from the 40-yard mark. Okay, and after both those players shoot, you count the score. And then you do it again, except in reverse order, to be extra fair. And then you count the score. And if the score remains tied, you just keep doing it until somebody misses. Somebody's going to miss. It may take a while, but somebody's going to miss. And that's how you do the tiebreaker in the round robin. And you cannot have a tie at the end of any mini game. So you'll just do that quick shootout, same horses you used for the chukker. Just bring them over to the goal, set them up on the 40-yard line, do a quick coin flip to see who goes first, and then both shoot from the 40, count score, and keep doing it until you you have a winner. Make sense? Okay, before the round robin starts, the host tournament committee should explain to the players or make their decision on should there be a three-way tie, which happens all the time. Should there be a three-way tie, how is that going to be resolved? And there's two options. Okay, the first option is to do a shootout. Rule 14D, the end of the game shootout, where all the players shoot from the 40-yard line. Okay, and you can do that with all three teams, and you keep doing it from the 40, everybody shoots, and you keep counting the score after every round. Okay, that can be done. It's kind of tedious. I've never done it that way, but it can be done. Or they can choose the second path, and the second path is what everybody usually chooses. What you do is if you have a three-way tie, in other words, the who beat who record is tied. White beat black, black beat red, and red beat white. Everybody beat everybody, okay? So then you go to net goals. Net goals is the goals you won by, okay? You count all those up. And then you compare those, and that should produce a winner. It might not, okay, but it should. And if that's the difference in goals between the teams at the end of the mini game. So if you won by 2, you're +2. If you lost by 2, you're -2, okay? And you add those up. And then that's your net goals, and you compare all the net goals of 3 teams, and the one with the highest positive, highest positive net goal count would win. Okay, so let's say net goals are tied. Everybody's +1, which can happen. Okay. Then you go to gross goals. Gross goals, like gross income, is all the goals you scored in the whole round robin. Okay, so each team has that number of all the goals they scored. And then you compare that. And if that doesn't produce a winner, in other words, the most goals wins, okay? If that doesn't produce a winner, then you have to do the shootout. You have no choice. So those are your ways to do it. Won-loss, net goals, gross goals, shootout. Or forget all that and opt for the shootout in the beginning. But you got to tell your teams before you start, before the throw-in. You have to tell them that you're opting for the shootout instead of net goals, gross goals, and then having the shootout as the alternate, last resort, so to speak. Everybody's going to pick the net goals, gross goals, and then shootout only if you have to, because the shootout's a huge pain. So that's probably what's going to happen. Okay, so that's your round robin. And now, after having explained the round robin to you, you see why it's not a desirable tournament format. It's complex. It's short mini games, so that doesn't. The best team sometimes needs a few chuckers to get moving, so it doesn't always produce the cleanest winner that you would like in a tournament, and nobody gets more than one game in. So I get that. That makes sense. But here's something I have seen done at a lot of small clubs in the summer, and it's actually quite brilliant. A lot of the smaller clubs, they have their weekend warriors that play polo. So for example, these people work all week, and they work hard, and they want to play on the weekends, and they want to play Saturday, and they want to play Sunday. They don't just want to play one of the days or whatever. Okay, now the bigger clubs, they have games during the week and this and that and the other thing. Forget that. This is for the people who want to cram as much polo as they can into a weekend and have it all count. Okay, so if let's say they only have 3 teams for a weekend, which is very common. Okay, they could use a round robin format, but that would just have the finals on Sunday. And if they used a regular, say, a regular format where you would have a draw, you have 3 teams, one gets a bye to the finals, the other 2 teams have to play and then produce a winner, and then that winner plays the finals. So you'd have 1 game Saturday, and you'd have 1 game Sunday, because there's nobody to play the consolation. So you're only having 1 game Saturday, 1 game Sunday, and 1 team gets cheated out of 1 game. Okay, so actually two teams, will get cheated out of a game. So then you have 1 team playing 2 games and 2 teams playing 1 game. That's why people don't like to do it. So here's a little thing. What you will do is you'll take your 3 teams and you'll all play Saturday in a round robin type format. But it's not a round robin. It's just a round robin format. So you'll follow all the protocols of the round robin that I just explained, except you will not follow the tied shootout thing, okay, at the end of the mini games, and you will not follow the last chukker being the last chukker of each mini game. Forget that. What you're going to do is you're going to play the first half of 3 games on Saturday between the 3 teams. It doesn't matter who wins or loses, loser stays up, none of that matters. You're playing the first half of each game between each team on Saturday, say. Okay, so if your regular game is 6 chukkers, the black team and the white team will play against each other for 3 chukkers, and you'll call it the first half of that game. And then the white team will play the red team 3 chukkers, and the black team will play the red team 3 chukkers. Okay, so everybody's played 3 chukkers. So they've all played the first half of a whole game. And then on Sunday, now you can see where I'm going with this. On Sunday, you play the second half of those games. So what you're doing is after the first half of all 3 games are played on Saturday, everybody's played 6 chukkers, but it's only the first half of each game, you suspend those games. You can suspend it for rain, weather, darkness, any other condition. So you say, well, we're suspending all 3 games until tomorrow, and we'll pick up right where we left off tomorrow. So umpires, you got to remember where the last play was at the end of each of the first half of each game. Okay, so write it down somewhere. Scorekeeper, write it down. Do not use a round robin score sheet, because this is not a round robin. Use 3 separate full game score sheets with 2 teams on each score sheet. Okay, and you'll just fill out the first half of each one of those score sheets on Saturday. And then on Sunday, when you do the second half of each game, you fill out the second half of each one of those score sheets. And then the last period for all of it will be the last periods that are played on Sunday. Make sense? Now you've played 3 games on Saturday and 3 on Sunday. Okay, and you've got 1 game in between each team. And then now you can go to a won-loss record, what you do in a normal tournament. And then you can go to net goals, and then you can go to gross goals, or you can do a shootout if you have to, whatever. But what you're doing is you're giving everybody more polo using that format, but you're not really using a round-robin format. You're using like a league play kind of format. Everybody plays everybody. So everybody gets more polo. I think you'll produce a more pure winner because you have a full game to do it, and it works great. And these clubs do it. It's not anywhere. I haven't noticed it anywhere in the rules, but the rule does say you can suspend a game and pick it up later. So it's well within the rules to do this. There's nothing that says you can't. So this is a great idea in my opinion. I think it's better than a round robin if you have 2 days instead of just 1 day to play. So think about it. And that's it for round robins.